Hi guys, thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to really welcome the people that turn up. I jokingly said there'll be 250 people on this call, but actually I think there's probably quite a few less than that. And I think what's interesting about that is probably down to a minority of people making a difference. And there's a very substantial individual who's joining us today called Lars, who's very much in the minority, who's identified an opportunity, which he's going to share with us, and he's actually making this happen. So that's something we're going to talk about today. The purpose of setting up the pub is to is to get to grips with new action in a straightforward, open and honest way, to describe what's going on and what's unfolding. We'll also unashamedly share what we've learned around the winning thinking process, and some of the learnings to stir up the debate and have a straightforward discussion as we can around this subject. Lars Carlston specifically has set up a factory or a business called British Volt, and he's going to talk about green scoring and the supply chain. And so, just to recap on some of the things we've talked about to date, some of the observations, they're a bit left of field. One of which is intimacy. In other words, having very free-flowing communication and a lot of closeness, and which gives rise to great relationships. And the second thing is a focus on profit. So it's a focus on profit relationship. I think it's come out of all of these 27 talks. There are some major buying shifts, certainly in the car market as well. There's a strong focus as well on doing the right thing, and there's a strong focus on local and community, which is another aspect of something that Lars is going to talk about. So I think the other thing is also around taking new action. There's lots of reasons as well why the governments have actually discouraged taking new action, which we'll touch on during this discussion. So without rabbiting on any further, I'm delighted to hand you over to Lars to so Lars can share his view. We'll then ask some questions and we'll develop the discussions we're going through. And please, during the process, feel free to fire any questions to us, and David will pick those up towards the end. So over to you, Lars. Delighted to have you here. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Tom. I'm actually a chairman of British Volt, and British Volt is a quite new company. We are building the first gigafactory in the UK, and we are intending to build a 30 gigawatt factory in 3 phases. First 10 gigawatt and another 10 and another 10. And we expect to put the shovel in the ground here early next year and be ready for the market in 2023 with the first batteries. And it's just quite an exciting journey we are at right now. Many people are saying, why are you doing this in the UK? I'm Swedish, by the way, so well, it's a bit strange maybe, but it was simply an opportunity actually where we could see that there were a window for us, and not many players were around. First you had the Brexit situation, and on top of that we got the virus, and we are now in a situation where we are the only player actually in the UK who are doing these things currently. I'm sure there will be many more to follow, but right now we are the only one, and with great excitement. And as we see it now, we are probably, well, as I said, we are the only one in the UK, while you're seeing a lot of activities in Europe currently, where many gigafactories are on the way and under construction, and also the same phase as we are right now. And they have quite a heavy support from the European Union, and they are actually a bit ahead of us in the UK, how we see about things and the support for this kind of initiatives. So I mean, it's very important that we are on our toes in the UK now to make all this happening, so we don't end up being behind the Europe, depending also how the Brexit now is going here in the end of the year. If it be a hard Brexit, we can definitely be, we need this factory to be competitive against Europe also. And many people are saying that, well, we don't have a trade agreement. How can you invest money in the UK with these kind of conditions? But we are saying that the demand for batteries in the UK is probably around 50 gigawatt here in the next years, and we are building 10 to start with, and all in all 30 gigawatt, which means that we have a demand which is so much higher than the supply. And so we are quite optimistic about the situation in the UK.
True.
Of course, there could be a problem for us if we are seeing the car industry going down as a consequence of trade agreements or whatever. So I mean that will be heavily affected on. But on the other hand, we also producing storage batteries and a number of other initiatives that we are doing right now. So we are very optimistic about the UK market for Gigafactory right now. Besides this, we are also thinking of how do we build the supply chain in the UK. That's the most critical and important thing that we are currently on with. Having the supply chain near the production is key. We cannot have a factory producing things with having suppliers from Far East, for instance, which would be totally crazy to and would add a lot of pressure on the environment. And that's also something that we see from the car manufacturer if they are using batteries from Asia, for instance. So the idea we are working with right now, which we're trying to introduce also to the government, is to also in Europe, having this green scoring where you are declaring your product. For example, if you are Jaguar and you are declaring your product, where is your battery from? If the battery is, for instance, from Asia, that would totally degrade the green scoring of the car, which means that the customer need to pay a higher tax for the car if the green scoring is getting bad. And so therefore, there will actually be a very good way and a very good initiative to use local supplier, and that goes for us also. So I mean, we also have a green scoring on our batteries, but I mean, the whole chain need to be complete in that way. So you have the green scoring in a way. I mean, this will be actually self-sustainable because we are supporting the system itself. I mean, if you put it on the end user, the customer, they need to pay more for the product. They need to pay an environmental tax if they have they are supplying the chain which is from Far East and had put a lot of pressure on the environment during long transports. So that's actually a very, very good initiative and something that we can be really proactive in doing, which will totally change the map from how, and also change, of course, competition, which means that we need to have everything should be homegrown. It should be grown local, and that's what we're actually working very, very hard with right now.
That's really fantastic. Thank you, Lars. I think it's almost like you're trying to reset the rules for the industry by taking the initiative where there's quite clear, demand, as you just said, but trying to get the structure of the industry right around that, including the supply chain. In terms of the tax, I mean, is the tax regime in place that you describe at the moment, or is that something you're...
No. I mean, this is just a proposal that we have, and we need to refine this more in a better way also before we're presenting this to the market. This is something, just an example on what kind of work we're doing right now to bring incentive to getting the supply chain to the UK, and this will be a really, really excellent way for the UK to work in this way. I think actually we're seeing the end of globalization right now when it comes to industry. The COVID have shown that it simply doesn't work, not just for this reason of that it having a heavy impact on the environment with these kind of long transports. It also shows that we can have interruption in the supply chain if something is happening further down the supply chain, like in Asia now, when the COVID started, we could clearly see that the industries didn't get any supply, even if the situation were okay where we are. Yeah. I mean, so I think this will definitely be the end of industrial globalization. We will see everything being homegrown, produced locally at site. So I think that's a huge change for the industry and something we've never seen in. I mean, the whole thing, we haven't seen this in 100 years. I mean, as far as I can see, it's probably the most dramatic change since industrialization. I don't think many people realize what we are standing in front of. I mean, it's going to be massive. I mean, it will be a total reset of the world. The old economy will go down fully. and that's what we're seeing right now. We will only be green sustainable investment for next year and for many, many years to come. So it's a very, very dramatic change, and I think many people might think that things will be back to normal pretty soon when all this is over, but it will never happen. It will be a new world being born. Like it or not, that's what will happen. And it's also very exciting to be a part of it right now. It's a massive opportunity, I think, that many people should embrace right now, and it brings so much opportunities where everything is new, and you're rewriting the map fully in this happening. We are making history right now.
Yeah, I think what's interesting there is that, in terms of the new world, it's great if you are taking proactive action like you are currently, which is fantastic, and setting the rules and stepping over the edge. I think there's a lot of people who, if you're not taking proactive action, they're getting quite worried. So I think that's the difference between being excited and quite fearful of and actually taking positive action and actually resetting some of these rules to try and get this sort of challenge right. So it's really fantastic.
Right on it there, Tom. I mean, what we need to do here is to be positive about the thing. We cannot be depressed and getting into this process, seeing this is so bad, what is happening, what are they doing with us. We just need to embrace this and see the opportunities and be positive, because there's no way out of this. So it will just degrade ourselves if we are continuing being depressive and don't see the opportunities. Just identify the opportunities and just embrace it. That's the way forward, and you will be very, very successful.
Yeah, I mean, I think my simple observation on depression is if you're not taking action, that's aligned with your beliefs, I think that catches up on you. I think it's and in terms of the your observations in terms of the leadership skills, Lars, we'll talk a bit about this. I'll talk a bit about this in terms of our observations of how to navigate these situations. What do you think, if you just take this emerging situation with COVID, what's your observation in terms of the skills before this kicked off, and what sort of skills are required to cope? You've touched on a few things around positivity, proactivity, etc.
Yeah.
But what else are you seeing at the moment?
I mean, positivity and also being proactive and being bold also. I think that's something, I'm as a Swedish person, I don't say that we are in Sweden so very bold or proactive in that way. But I mean, clearly in the UK, you have, like for instance, that when we arrived to the UK and everything was quite well furnished with APC and the UK BIC and great initiatives and very, very positive and really, really focused in that way. But no one, I mean, it was like you are, put it this way, you are preparing for the Olympics, but you have no competitors. I mean, it's a bit like that. So it's a bit strange, actually. So what I'm seeing here, what's happening in the UK, well, the past decade here probably, is that you don't see, people don't dare to be bold. They are worried that things are going wrong, and just step up and do things. I mean, be more doers. I think that because you have so much skills in the UK and so much positive energy, but people are a bit afraid to step up and make this kind of step and be a bit crazy and be entrepreneurial. I think that's what's been missing actually in the UK in the past years, which is a bit sad actually, because there's so much out there and so much skilled people and positive energy, but in a way, you're afraid that something will go wrong. You'll be in the press, or there'll be someone be scrutinizing you. Yeah, that might be the case, but I mean, that's a risk you have to take as an entrepreneur. And so I mean, what I would like to say: be bold and just do things. Yeah. Be a doer.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great. I guess at that point, I'd like to just share some of our observations, Lars, if that's okay. And if you. I'll walk through this, and I'm not particularly pretending what I'm saying is right or wrong, but if you could pick up on some of the points you either agree with or disagree with, that'd be great, and we'll have, ask me any questions at the end. So, I think some of the things you've talked about are really very close to my heart. So, interesting enough, when I was 17, oddly enough, my CV said I wanted to see the revitalisation of manufacturing, and this seems to be the biggest project I've seen actually since. Having said that a little while ago, I'm a little bit older than 17, but I think the other thing is as well is actually in terms of actually taking new action. It's actually there's an element of actually overcoming our pride to see the errors of the past, because I think if you look at the past over the last 40 years in terms of the development of the combustion engine, etc., there's been some pretty regrettable things that have happened, and I think one of the challenges is, do we see that, and actually what are we going to do about it? I think the other thing is, I'd say, around technology. It's interesting, you go back to steam versus internal combustion on the sort of juncture in terms of electric vehicles and whatever the technology, maybe hydrogen might be. The reason why steam would have been better than internal combustion engines, but the reason why it didn't happen was because of an EQ related thing, which was steam was associated with heavy locomotives, and heavy locomotives were not sexy, and therefore all the development went into the internal combustion engine, which at the time was relatively small and interesting. So I think some of these decisions in terms of which way to go are really critical to make at the moment. And there's a similar thing in terms of lithium versus hydrogen, in terms of storage and power supply. So there's that sort of challenge in terms of going down the right route, I think, which is well worth thinking about. I think as well, in terms of sourcing the components, where the components coming from. China, for example, control 51% of lithium, and I like the way you're sourcing some of your components locally as well. Some of the key carbon and other elements which are really critical to these things. There's some other things I think around the competition, which is around how long does the thing last before you throw it away, and Tesla are just claiming a battery with 1 million miles, which sounds interesting. And also they're sort of moving the technology into solid state, so it's in other words, to make it part of the vehicle structure. So there's some interesting challenge in terms of how the relationships are going to pan out with the OEMs, I guess. I think the other thing in terms of green supply chain, there's something else that's going on here, which is a vast reduction in the number of people that are employed in automotive manufacturing. So cars gone from having many tens of thousands of components to around about 2,000, I think, now. And so the simplicity of it, the whole powertrain being replaced by a battery, etc. And there's a really important, talk about localization, but what about jobs? I think there's a question mark as to, with these factories, should we employ people as well to employ, to maximize the benefit in the supply chain. I think the other thing is that profit as well is one of the questions I'd like your thoughts on is around profit. When we're delivering these long-term projects in terms of sustainability, actually the thing's got to make profit. And in the industry, automotive industry, I don't think has made enough profit for a longer time. And it's definitely a bit of a rude word in the UK, profit, but in the US less so. But definitely profit is critical to get to achieve the things that you're looking to achieve. So I think when I look at the automotive industry, I spent my career in the automotive industry, and it was pretty aggressive, to be honest. You had to be a brave man to stick your hand up and challenge things. And somehow I found myself in that situation a lot. But I think when I look back, some of the observations recently around the VW emissions scandal, somebody would have known about that, and somebody didn't put their hand up. So in an organisation, we need to have that free-flowing, communication to avoid big surprises, because it's extraordinary. An industry like the automotive is, got its own particular culture. I think as well, it's worth acknowledging that people are pretty troubled as well, and pride is quite a big issue. So it's all very well talking about these nice things about people working together, but when people are coming to work, they're worried, and that's not a great place to be innovative. And that some of the things you just touched on, and I'll touch a bit more on. So I think the other thing is that with a crisis, and this is very common to the sort of turnaround situations we've resolved in the past, everything comes to the fore. Everything. So it's not as though you've talked very eloquently about green supply chain. Actually, everything has to work in very close unison. So the analogy around this, I think, is the jazz band, right? It's a metaphor to try and explain what we've found over the last 6 or 9 months in terms of how best to cope with this. And it's really around, first of all, seeing the issue clearly. So what is the issue you're trying to solve, and actually how are you going to solve it? And is it steam, or is it hydrogen, or is it lithium? I think it's almost that level of thinking, and then planning ahead to think, actually, what are the factors you can then control, and actually how you're going to control those to make sure that at the end of the day that you guys are creating a profit. And And I think the difficulty, the challenge with this is if people are a bit troubled, people tend to look in their rear view mirror. They don't look forwards in the way that you and I are talking at the moment. Actually, the past tends to overwhelm the current, and be worried about quite a few things. So I think what some of the observations around people who've done the Jazz Band and the Winning Thinking program is about having almost throwing away the script, or the music script, rewriting the rules in the way you're just describing around the legislation, the tax, and the like, and actually then get into critical thinking. So even if you're the cleaner and you don't think something's right, you can put your hand up and say, hold on a minute, I need a new broom, or I need this, and have that level of intimacy and valuing people right the way throughout the organisation. And that really becomes the means of steering the ship in the right direction, both at a strategic level but also at a grassroots level. Because the minute you create a script, or it's too prescriptive, you create potentially a tyranny of tolerance, which is restricting that sort of level of communication. And I think some of the observations historically in terms of the old leadership styles is very much around creating a 100-day plan or a longer-term plan, and then everybody's sort of falling behind it. Actually, I think we're in a much more immediate situation where you have to move on all fronts and steer this ship almost on a daily basis to achieve whatever the target is, but really become very aware of actually what's the thinking that's driving your strategic decision making, because there's a distinct danger of missing the target altogether or getting completely shafted by China, frankly. In terms of China control a lot of the lithium material, and they could just have internal transfer costs of zero lithium, for example, and do some very aggressive things in the market, which they're very good at doing historically. So, and I think you're absolutely right. Within this as well, one of the purposes of setting up the pub was also to identify collaborative opportunities, and we have had people from the government actually speak here. Lord Glassman is a very interesting strategic thinker from the Labour Party, who shared his thoughts on that. So I think you're absolutely right in terms of collaboration. I think finally I'd say that the stakes are very high. Fear is increasing. So whilst we're talking about proactively taking action, for the people who are not, fear is increasing. The automotive industry is still very steady. So the OEMs are still very slow at taking this stuff on board. And I think another sort of analogy is around the stealth fighter in terms of the thinking. The stealth fighter in the US, everybody thought a stealth fighter should go faster to be more difficult to identify and see, when in fact the stealth program actually identified that actually the vehicle needs to go slower in order to be less visible. So this is the sort of thinking that we can pull out of in terms of our winning thinking approach, and that's certainly something I'd like you to think about in terms of some of the challenges in the organisation and how that might manifest itself to check and steer the ship in the right direction. So and I think so they're my thoughts, Lars. Over to you. What do you think? Anything that
I think it makes sense what you're saying, actually, and there are so many. I think also back to the OEM and the automotive industry in general. I mean, they are quite slow, as you're saying, and that's also opening up opportunities for many newcomers. I mean, you're seeing a lot of new companies being created. It's Lucid, it's Nikola, or whatever it is. I mean, it's these are players that would never ever would reach the market in a normal economy if things were like it was before, for instance. But I mean, also what we clearly see that the traditional producers today, they're having this kind of a rucksack with full of combustion engines and bits and pieces from the old economy, which will not be valid in the future, and that's more of a burden actually to have it in their portfolio. And as you do know how the automotive industry works, I mean, they're having their platforms and they really need to run this one for 6 to 8 years before they are fully paid back. So I mean, they're stuck with this kind of thinking and mentality for many years to go, while a newcomer can start tomorrow and say, hey, I'm having this technology, am I starting right now? So it's So they're a bit behind already in that way, even if they're creating new ventures and new opportunities and building electric cars and also hydrogen cars but still though they're a part of the old economy and the old industrialization program in a way, which creates this kind of. But that's also interesting. It creates this kind of opportunity. But of course, I'm deeply concerned about the automotive industry because this is going very, very rapidly now, and you do know that the cost for them to develop electric cars, for instance, is massive, and I foresee that many of the existing OEMs today will not survive.
Yeah,
I mean there will be fusions like you see with Stellantis, PSA, Fiat. These kind of situations will be even more. Actually, I think there will be no alternative for them really, instead of going into bankruptcy. But it's it's a dramatic change, put it that way. And I mean, in Europe, I think, how many do we have in Europe for the automotive industry? I think it's 14 million people, something between 14 and 16 million. It's a lot of people actually were having their income from the automotive industry. And like you said, also having less bits and pieces in an electric car will definitely reduce this. With lots of people actually will be unemployed. So I mean, well, from the political perspective, I don't think they really could foresee this, or politicians are not industrialists either. So I mean, they clearly didn't have this in mind, and the consequences will be heavy for the industry. And before we have restored this and rebuilt it, it will take many years. I foresee probably up to 15-20 years before we are in a phase where we were in a way. So I mean, it's going to be a huge change, huge shift, and it will be also be a painful experience for many. So I mean, while it's lots of opportunities, there will also be a lot of pain and a lot of problems actually occurring in the market, especially for the industry, with this kind of dramatic change.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks, Lars. I think there's a slightly different type of challenge as well to chuck in the mix from a positive perspective. Is actually who's going to control the demand. So if you look at the technology around the cost of buying a vehicle, actually it tends towards the autonomous vehicle in terms of shared ownership, ultimately, to reduce the number of vehicles we've got on the road, which is just stupid. I mean, we've typically got 3 cars and 2 drivers, personally. And so I think there's a question mark as to whether or not the Waymos of this world are going to drive the demand with their technology, or maybe a Tesla, as opposed to the classic OEMs, and leave the OEMs out of the equation as well, I think, which is, are you looking at different sources of demand in terms of, some of the more innovative brands? And I mean, not necessarily, I'm interested, I thought maybe collaborating with Tesla or VW or somebody, not so, or Waymo or some of these other new OEM manufacturers of vehicles.
I mean, what we're seeing right now, I mean, a car is not a car anymore. It's a tech product. It's, I mean, automotive is tech all of a sudden. So it's totally changed. I mean, it's not a car. It's not an industrial product in that way. All of a sudden, we're a technology company. I mean, we're producing a car which is a tech. I mean, there's so many ingredients in this one. It's artificial intelligence. It's you just name it. And also, like you were touching here, the ownership. Do you really own a car? Do you subscribe the car? Do you just step on it, or are you having a subscription where you can actually just step on a car which is going around the streets here every day? I mean, it's so many dramatic changes actually right now. So it's even hard actually to digest and to understand. I think, like we said before, it's such a dramatic change. So it's and also, I mean, you should also have in mind that the automotive industry is very, very square and slow, and so having that in mind means that there will be a lot of new players on the market, because the automotive industry will never be able to catch up on this. They're too slow, and they're living in a totally different mindset when it comes to how to do things. As I think the fundamental is that they've been living in this kind of economy where you're having your platform for 6 to 8 years. So that's why things are taking so long time. And I mean, I can just take an example from Saab Automobile, which I was heavily involved with during these days. And when they sent a question to General Motors, they got a response back in a year later. So I mean, it was that slow actually. I mean, that's quite significant for how slow the automotive industry are. Even if they're trying to change now, but the change will not go quick enough for them. So therefore, I think the old OEM will be in deep problems actually for the many years to come. But as said, opening up for huge opportunities for new innovative entrepreneurs. We will see many Teslas are coming here in the next years, both for hydrogen, for electric battery propulsion car. So it's a huge opportunity. I mean, it's a massive opportunity. Yeah. So even if I'm sad I love cars and I love petrol cars also. Couldn't say anything else. I mean, I'm a petrol head in that way, but it's they are too slow actually, and they will not be able to catch up. They will, as said, many will not last.
Yeah, I think I think you're right. I think what I did some work with a vehicle manufacturer recently, and what they did is retrofitted vehicles for military use. And the interesting thing about that was, going back to, we identified that the core capability was around the electrical system. It was nothing to do with retrofitting things with machine guns, fitting the suspension. It was all around the wiring system and the electronics that drove the whole. And that was at a fairly rudimentary level as well. These are military vehicles without too much technology. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's a major shift taking place. So, Lars, that's great. I'll just hand over to David to give us a different perspective on life. I noticed that Tom's joined us as well, so I don't know if Tom, he's got his face marks gone, but I don't know if Tom can speak, but we'll test that later maybe. But
yeah, well, I'm on a train, so it's not the most easy and convenient way to participate.
Yeah.
So while I have now a second, I take the opportunity to congratulate Lars, because I'm extremely pleased to see that in this country we start building stuff again and producing stuff, because that has been a long time. And I also like the entrepreneurial sort of look at things, and just using the current crisis, if you like, and the current circumstances actually to move forward rather than to move backwards. There are too many people living in fear, and no new businesses, no new economy will be built based on fear, only on opportunity and looking at the future. So I might have a chance later for a question or two. If not, then I just wanted to get these comments in, because I really appreciate Lars' contribution this week.
Yeah, it's fantastic. That's great. Thanks, Tom. That's excellent. So, David, over to you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm also in the Lars fan club, actually. Honestly, no, but seriously, it's really, really good. And the one point I wrote down there, kind of embracing uncertainty. Is something that you talked about, and I really love that. And in terms of the innovative entrepreneurial opportunities, positive change, this type of thing, it's right up my street. And it's one of the reasons, of course, one of the many reasons why you're getting the success that you are. And what I wanted to talk about as well is really about the complexity of the world that we live in, but actually how change is quite simple, actually, when we understand it a bit more. And as how society is becoming more and more complex, and it's certainly becoming a faster pace as well. And the complexities, the craziness of paying £3 for a cup of coffee at a shop when it costs 2 pence to produce, or the commuting for 2 or 3 hours a day, which of course people are just not wanting to do anymore. And people's lives have become a lot more complex as well, and with the world that we live in, and that's fair enough to an extent. And what I understand, what I believe is that people running in line with the other aspects of their life, and that they feel that creating change is also complex as well, and it really isn't. there's reasons that stop people from creating change, but it's not complex at all. There's a saying that I use often, that change is very simple. It's just not an easy thing to do. And the reason why it's not easy is because of the fear that's based, because of the existential crisis that we're living through at the moment. Well, some people might think that, because of the issues that are going on, because people don't really have the deeper knowledge of who they are and understanding of how their brain is working from an evolutionary point of view or whatever, they're not really understanding who they are and how they can create change, and how simple change it actually is to create. Once you, it's not quick fix necessarily, but when you actually start to get to grips with it, and it's the fear-based responses that are holding you back, people will continue to look, right, where's the next thing? Why am I not finding this? Where is it? What's this next complex thing? You know, all this overload of information, and I'll have information as much as the next person does, but this overload of information is creating stasis. So in terms of new action, which we always like, of course, on this call, start, and I'm quoting you as well, Lars, be a doer, 100%. That's about getting on and just making that change. Whatever it is, just start somewhere. Because it's not in the next pamphlet. It can be sometimes, but it's often not in the next pamphlet or the next blog that you're going to read, or next week once the government have made a different decision. It's about starting now and pushing forward. Being bold, being decisive, and allowing yourself to gather momentum. And there's two key words. There was another presentation last week there. It was going out around the world, actually, but it was the key points that I brought up was worthiness and belief. And you often talk about the personal identity, I think, the understanding you have of yourself, Lars. I don't need to tell you, but you've got a strong personal identity and a strong belief in yourself and what you're doing. And if people can recognise that and develop that within themselves, and worthiness to be able to be in the spot, the place that they're in, and the business leader or the employee or whatever they are, really understanding those two words a lot deeper, and where the limiting beliefs may well be, and that they can really push a whole lot further forward. But it's about starting. The new action is just about getting on and starting.
Yeah,
and that's what I'd like to say.
Yeah, thanks, David. I think the Winning Thinking program's all about. I don't think we should underestimate the skills to do this as well. So there are people like us in organisations, but then there's lots of other people who are doing the job. So I think our observations is not to underestimate those skills, and also the courage and the environment that's required to allow people to step over the edge without getting completely shafted, to be honest, because a lot of this stuff is actually jobs worth. If somebody comes to you, Lars, and says, look, Lars, you've got it wrong, we should be making hydrogen. Actually, how are you going to take that? Is that an appropriate discussion, etc., etc.? How do we keep organisations healthy? So I think certainly our observations are that the subtlety of this really matters. So when we're running the Winning Thinking program, we talk about thinking, and people are just completely unaware of what drives them. How did we get to where we've got to? How did we get to 2020 over the last 40 years? How on earth have we been wrecking the planet in such a reckless way, for example? And actually then from this point onwards, what actually drives us, and what actually is, when we open our mouths, are we aware of the implications? Like Boris Johnson saying, we will bounce back. And you are firmly of the view, although your words are different to mine, that no, this is a different world. And I completely agree with that. So I think I just had something else. So a friend of mine, it's like when the shipyard in Belfast went bust, a friend of mine who's got a bit of a background in shipyards actually put an offer in on the Belfast shipyard, right? And he's the least likely guy to do it. And actually it's interesting enough, he was in the front runner of buying the Belfast shipyard. And it's just like you, Lars. Nobody else has got the courage to do it. Someone's done it. And then actually, if you're on the front foot, things become quite easy. But if you're, sort of sitting on the fence, life gets very difficult. So I think finding that balance is really critical at the moment. So I don't know, David, anything else you'd add to what we've just...
No, not really. No, I completely agree with you. There's absolutely is the courage to move forward. And yeah, I don't want to confuse people with saying it's easy or it's simple to change. There is still processes to go through, but it's kind of coming from it from a different angle. It's not beating that same drum that we've been doing over and over again. Yeah. It's about understanding thinking, as you say. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Brilliant. So, yeah, and it's also recognising the automotive industry is a very slow industry. So it's, you're breaking on the rules as well, Lars, in terms of what you're trying to do and literally change the world. So congratulations on that. So First of all, Lars, I'd like to really thank you for your contribution today. It's been really fantastic.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Great pleasure.
Yeah, great. And I don't know if there's anything that, in terms of supporting this notion of taking new action, is there anything that has come out of this call in terms of developing collaboration that's worth exploring moving forwards?
I mean, I think there are many things that need to be addressed here. I mean, there's so many things that need to be changed and need to be done, and creating the awareness, it's so important. Also from politicians and from governments. I mean, they're also confused in a way and a bit very lost actually, and so afraid of making the wrong decisions. And I mean, we were talking previously here about being bold, being loud, and that goes for the politicians as well. They also need to or dare to step up and say things, and not all the time calculating what will the voters are saying now. But I mean, the current politicians we have, sadly enough, they are really going with the wind in a way. They are not really stepping up, and we need leaderships in times like this. Actually, we need strong leaderships who can actually point the way and change. As we are in a change of the world, they also need to direct us and saying where we are heading, because right now it's floating around. Even if everybody knows it's a huge change, and it's been driven of various expectations, financial expectations, but still the politicians need to step up also and point the direction. I think that's very, very important actually, that we can clearly see where do we find this strong leadership who actually can point the way for us.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. There's something I think within that, because I played a small part on the House of Lords Artificial Intelligence Committee, and it's the most defunct organisation you could possibly imagine, to be quite honest. And I think what I noticed is that there's actually a different language and there's a different way of working, Lars, that we shouldn't underestimate. So when you get public sector driver like you, private sector entrepreneur like yourself, you've got the public sector, you've got the automotive, they've all got different thinking. Yeah. Actually, it's a question of identifying that so you can get everybody on the same playing field, because there's a distinct danger that, less people are moving forwards. I think this is a unique time where this is something else I've picked up at the pub. Actually, the public sector and the private sector need to work together. Otherwise, this is not going to work. And it's truly a unique, exciting challenge. So anyway, really fantastic. So anyway, that's been a great conversation. Let's draw it to a close. Tony, have you got any final thoughts?
We've got some questions, Tom.
All right, Kerry, crack
I had one question, Tom, to Lars. My background, as you might be aware of, is more in food supply chain. And, as the UK, we import roughly 80% of all the food we consume. And this is a reset, as we have said earlier. And I tend to believe that there will be far more local production of foodstuff as well. And I was just wondering, because you were referring to local production of parts and that particular supply chain in your industry, if you feel or if you notice any sort of common ground in the UK with the politicians, with business people, with the finances, it doesn't really matter, but is this feeling that we should start produce more local and source more local of parts or food, doesn't matter. Do you see this as a common thought? Do you see this emerging, or are the people still not aware of that development?
I think you can clearly see it's coming. I mean, and I think also the COVID situation have clearly pointed the weakness of the infrastructure of the supply chain, which makes the companies very vulnerable. I mean, they've been suffering really hard from having bits and pieces in the supply chain from Far East, for instance, when all this started. Remember back in March, and when we didn't really have the virus here in Europe in that way, but still the factories were in a standstill position as they didn't get supply, and there were problems actually. So I think not just from a sustainable point of view, where you actually put a lot of stress on the environment with having these long and heavy transports, which actually bring transport many times from container ships, which sometimes are even fueled by asphalt. So it's really heavy polluters. So for now, I can see, maybe we see in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll have a different way of transporting things. We maybe have hydrogen ships who are really sustainable, and that will maybe open up for a supply chain which is not really that local. But for now, I think we just need to focus on building the supply chains in all industries close to where the production is. I think that's where we are. And so clearly, I mean, having China as our backyard and supplier of things is nothing that we can continue having. I mean, if we are serious with sustainable green production, then we need to change ourselves. We need to change the supply chain, and that's something we see clearly in the UK now. They've been good, actually. I mean, you see both UK BIC and APC. They are addressing these kind of things, at least from their point of view. They are not government, but they are government funded organizations. So we can clearly see that building the supply chain is going to change a lot, and from the UK perspective even more, as we don't know what kind of outcome we have with the Brexit and the trade agreements. So from that perspective, we need to have everything within UK, as far as I see it.
David, over to you. What questions have you got?
Yes. So for Lars, there seems to be a momentum that will be arriving to some sort of critical mass, a strategic intent that is now moving quickly. In the face of this, how will British Volt fare against growing competition?
I mean, we are embracing competition. I think from our perspective, it's good to have competition in the UK. I mean, right now we are the single player in the UK when it comes to mass production of batteries. So from that perspective, but still, as I said, I mean, the demand is so much higher, so we cannot produce that much ourselves. I mean, the market is currently big enough for many more players than just us. So I mean, we are just seeing that competition will boost the market in a way and creating more awareness, and we can eventually also share supply chain, which is also very positive. So it's so I have no worries about competition right now, not in this market where we are now. But of course, well, for the future, I mean, if you're having 10 gigafactories in the UK, maybe things start becoming a bit problematic in a way. But I mean, as you see right now, we just need to defend ourselves against Europe, because they are quite very supportive with injecting funds into building gigafactories from government. I mean, look at the German government, who have been supporting Northvolt up in Sweden yesterday, so they can build faster in Sweden, so they can come to Germany and build over there. So, I mean, it's quite unique actually how the European governments are actually supporting this kind of process in a very, very massive way. And we have seen that also same situation or in Canada, for instance. So it's so they are, well, they're really on top of this right now. And I think we need in the UK to, well, they did massive investment in both UK BIC and APC and various initiatives supporting this. But I think we need to have not just funding, we need to have a movement where actually government are more precise and like, as I said before, having this kind of strong leadership pointing the way. There's no time to be unclear right now. You need to be very, very precise and clear with your intentions.
Thank you. That was a question from Peter, by the way. And then a question from Anoop. Your manufacturing investment will be unique and groundbreaking. How have you evaluated that in terms of future-proofing it, given the new uncertain world, inverted commas, and proving the value, including sustainability?
I mean, there you have it again. With the sustainability, that's actually what we're talking about with the supply chain. That's important, and identify the right raw materials, which is a bit sensitive when it comes to batteries many times, but there are parts that we are currently in progress with and working very, very hard on. And when you look at the profit, it's, batteries is a very low profit industry. That's why we need to produce them in a large scale to be profitable and to make money on it. So there's a really high scale production that is the key for producing batteries. If you're not specializing yourself in doing some kind of performance batteries, perhaps for in a low volume for exotic car brands or specific, then you can probably make money on. But I mean, for consumer batteries, as we may call this, for EV cars and for battery storage, this mass production that we need to reach to be profitable and to make money on the product.
Thank you. And one final comment, which is a good one to end on, from Chris Wyatt. Fantastic call, pounds and pounds and pounds of value. Here we are.
Yeah, that's definitely our intention, maximum bang for buck. I mean, for example, our program, we've condensed from a 3-day program to a 2-day program down to 35 minutes, Lars. And that's what it's about. It's about really delivering maximum bang for buck for every decision, check, balance, jazz band, make this stuff happen. But I think you should get knighted by the Queen for your efforts. I don't know if Swedes can get knighted by the Queen, but I think I'd stick you at the top of the list. Your focus on doing the right thing is absolutely brilliant. The sustainability thing is, I think if you do the right thing, it holds water. The challenge is to maintain the courage to do that. So I don't think there's any doubt in your courage. I think the challenge still remains in terms of how do we align our organisations behind this to actually make this stuff happen, to get this collaboration moving on all fronts, which is definitely not to be underestimated. So, but anyway, that's really fantastic. Thank you, Lars. I really appreciate your time. It's been great fun as well. Fun's an important element of business as far as I'm concerned. And thank you very much. I don't know if you got any final thoughts, but
thank you, Tom. Yeah, it was a great pleasure to attend your show here, and hopefully we can bring some kind of should I say, optimism and also giving some kind of support to all these entrepreneurs that are out there, and like I said, be bold, be loud, and just do it. That's the way.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we ought to drink a bit more. I don't drink, I haven't drunk for years, but for a very good reason. I did get a bit loud, but anyway, I think loudness is definitely 100%. Thank you very much, Lars. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. All the best to you. Take care. Ciao.